I was standing in my own office when he said it. "We're letting you go, Richard. This company needs fresh vision, and frankly, you're in the way." Blake didn't even look uncomfortable. He sat in the chair across from my desk, the desk I'd worked at for 23 years, with his arms crossed and that same expression he'd worn since he was 16. The one that said he already knew he was smarter than everyone in the room. I remember my hands were flat on the desk. I didn't move them. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at him and said, "You're firing me." "We're restructuring," he corrected, like he was doing me a favor by softening the language. "You'll get a severance package. It's generous considering." Considering what, I wanted to ask. Considering I built this place from nothing? Considering I put his mother through business school while working 60-hour weeks? Considering I brought him into the company when no one else would hire him after he flamed out of 2 startups? But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded slowly and asked, "Does your mother know?" He shifted in his seat, just barely. "She agrees it's time. We both think you've earned a rest." A rest? That's what they were calling it. I was 59 years old. I didn't want a rest. I wanted to keep doing the work I loved, in the company I'd spent 2 decades building with my own hands. But apparently, that wasn't part of the new vision. I stood up. Blake stayed seated, watching me like he was waiting for an outburst. I didn't give him one. "When do you want me out?" I asked. "End of the week," he said. "We'll handle the transition internally." I nodded again. Then I walked out of my own office and didn't look back. She stood near the back with a glass of water and a name tag that was peeling off. And when I asked her what she did, she said, "Survive, mostly." I liked her immediately. We married a year later. Blake was 12. He was quiet back then, a little sullen, but I figured that was normal for a kid whose parents had split. I didn't try to be his father. His dad was still around sporadically, and I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. I just tried to be present, reliable. I showed up to his soccer games. I helped him with his science projects. When he got into trouble at school for skipping class, I sat with him and asked what was going on instead of yelling. Caroline told me more than once that I was better to him than his biological father had ever been. I didn't do it for credit. I did it because it felt right. When Blake graduated high school, he didn't have a plan. His grades were decent, but he wasn't interested in college. He wanted to build something, he said. Start a business. Be an entrepreneur. I respected that. I'd started my own company at 32, a logistics and supply chain consulting firm that specialized in helping mid-size manufacturers optimize their operations. It wasn't flashy, but it was stable, profitable, and growing. Blake asked if he could work for me. Not as a favor, he insisted. He wanted to learn the business, prove himself. I said yes. I brought him in as an operations assistant. I paid him fairly, taught him the systems, introduced him to clients. Caroline was thrilled. She'd gone back to school with my support and had recently finished her MBA. She was working part-time for a marketing firm, but she'd always talked about eventually joining me in the business. I thought we were building something together, a family legacy. I just told him I was glad he tried, and that there was always a place for him here. He stayed 2 years that time. Then he left again for another startup. This one was a subscription box service for artisanal snacks. It also failed. When he came back the 3rd time, Caroline sat me down and asked if we could make him a partner. Not full ownership, she said. Just enough equity to make him feel invested, to give him a reason to stay. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to help Blake, but because he hadn't shown much interest in actually learning the business. He was always looking for shortcuts, always talking about disruption and scale without understanding the fundamentals. But Caroline looked at me with those eyes that said this mattered to her, that it would mean something to see her son settled. Stable. So I agreed. I gave Blake 15% of the company. I structured it carefully with vesting schedules and performance benchmarks because I wanted him to earn it. I wanted him to understand that ownership came with responsibility. He signed the papers without reading them. He was good at the schmoozing part. The lunches, the handshakes, the LinkedIn posts. What he wasn't good at was the follow-through. I'd get calls from clients asking where their reports were, emails from team members saying Blake had promised them something and then disappeared. Small things at first, missed deadlines, forgotten meetings. I covered for him. I told myself he was still learning, that he'd grow into the role. Caroline didn't see it, or maybe she didn't want to. Whenever I brought up concerns, she'd get defensive. She'd say I was being too hard on him, that I expected perfection. I didn't expect perfection. I just expected effort. But I didn't push it. I figured time would either prove me right or prove me wrong, and either way, I'd deal with it when it happened. He wanted to bring in new software, new processes, new branding. He used a lot of buzzwords: synergy, optimization, digital transformation. I wasn't against change. I'd been running the company for over 20 years and I knew we needed to evolve. But Blake's ideas weren't grounded in reality. He wanted to spend 6 figures on a website redesign when our current site was perfectly functional. He wanted to hire a brand strategist when we already had a solid reputation in our industry. I told him we'd consider it, but that we needed to prioritize profitability first. He didn't like that. That's when the comments started. Little things, casual jabs in meetings. Richard's a bit old school on this. We need someone who understands the modern market. He started scheduling client meetings without telling me. He'd present proposals that contradicted strategies we'd already agreed on. When I called him out on it, he'd smile and say, "I thought we were empowering team members to take initiative." Caroline didn't say anything. She was working more closely with Blake now, handling marketing and business development. The two of them had started having lunch together every week. Just the two of them, to strategize. I told myself it was fine. They were bonding. That was a good thing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being slowly edited out of my own story. It essentially gave Blake and Caroline the ability to outvote me on any major decision. I asked why it was structured that way. Blake said it was standard for partnerships, that it would streamline decision-making. I said I'd think about it. That night, Caroline brought it up at dinner. She said it would be good for us, that it would give her more security, more investment in the business she'd helped build. I didn't remember her building much of anything, but I didn't say that. I said I was concerned about the control structure. She got quiet. Then she said, "You don't trust me." It wasn't about trust, I told her. It was about protecting the company I'd spent decades building. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. Tired of being the bad guy every time I asked a reasonable question. Tired of feeling like an outsider in my own company. I thought if I gave them what they wanted, things would go back to normal. They didn't. Blake started making decisions without consulting me. He hired new staff I'd never met. He changed vendor contracts I'd spent years negotiating. When I questioned him, he'd say, "Caroline and I already discussed this." I'd look at Caroline and she'd nod. "It makes sense, Richard. We need to move faster." I stopped fighting. I figured they'd learn from their mistakes and we'd adjust course when the numbers started to slip. The numbers didn't slip. If anything, revenue went up slightly. Blake was bringing in new clients, younger companies that liked his energy and his pitch. I should have been happy, but instead I felt like I was watching my company turn into something I didn't recognize. In conversations with Caroline when they thought I wasn't listening, I started noticing other things. My access to certain financial accounts had been changed. I'd try to log in to review reports and I'd get an error message. When I asked Blake about it, he said it was part of a security upgrade. I asked for the new login credentials. He said he'd send them. He never did. I tried to talk to Caroline about it. I told her I felt like I was being pushed out. She sighed. She said I was being paranoid, that Blake was just trying to modernize our systems. You've always been resistant to change, she said. Maybe it's time to let go a little. Let go. That phrase again. Blake walked in at 9:30. He had a folder under his arm and that same calm, entitled expression on his face. "Richard, do you have a minute?" he asked. I said sure. He closed the door behind him. That's when he told me I was being let go. He didn't call it firing. He called it transitioning to retirement. He said the company was heading in a new direction, and that my leadership style didn't align with the vision anymore. I asked if Caroline knew. He said yes. She supported the decision. I asked when this decision had been made. He said they'd been discussing it for a few months. They wanted to be sure before they said anything. I didn't ask why they didn't have the decency to tell me to my face together. I already knew the answer. I asked what the severance package was. He slid the folder across the desk. I opened it. The number was laughable. Barely enough to cover 6 months of expenses, let alone the decades I'd put into the company. I looked up at him. "This is insulting." He shrugged. "It's what the board approved." "What board?" I asked. "There is no board." "Caroline and I," he said. "We're the majority shareholders." And there it was. The structure I'd agreed to 6 months ago. The structure that gave them the power to outvote me, to overrule me, to erase me. I stood up. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I said, "I'll be out by the end of the week." Blake nodded. He looked almost relieved, like he'd been expecting me to yell, to fight. I didn't. I just walked out. I thought about calling Caroline, demanding an explanation, asking how she could do this to me after everything I'd done for her, for Blake. But I didn't. Because I realized something as I sat in my car, staring at nothing. She'd made her choice. And it wasn't me. When she did, she looked tired. She went straight to the bedroom without saying a word. I followed her. I asked if we could talk. She sighed. "Blake told me what happened. I'm sorry, Richard, I really am. But this is what's best for everyone." "Best for everyone," I repeated. "Or best for you and Blake?" She didn't answer. She just started getting ready for bed, like the conversation was already over. I tried again. "Caroline, I gave you everything. I supported you. I brought Blake into the company when no one else would give him a chance. And this is how you repay me?" She turned to look at me then. Her expression wasn't angry. It was worse. It was indifferent. "You didn't give us anything, Richard," she said quietly. "We earned it. Blake and I have been running that company for the last year while you sat in your office and resisted every change we tried to make. You were holding us back." I felt something crack inside me. Not break. Just crack. Like a windshield with a single fracture line that you know is going to spread. "I built that company," I said. My voice was still calm. Still controlled. "And now it's ours," she replied. "You should be proud. You raised Blake well, he's ready to lead." She said it like it was a compliment, like I should be grateful. I didn't say anything else, I just left the room. A few employees looked uncomfortable when they saw me carrying boxes to my car, but no one asked questions. I'm sure Blake had already spun some story about me retiring, about stepping down to enjoy my golden years. Caroline didn't come to the office that week. I assumed she was avoiding me. On Thursday afternoon, I was loading the last box into my car when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mr. Hayward," a man's voice said. This is Dennis Chen from North Point Accounting. I'm calling about a discrepancy we found in your company's financial records. I froze. What kind of discrepancy? I'd prefer to discuss this in person, he said. Are you available tomorrow morning? I was very available. Dennis Chen's office was downtown, in one of those glass and steel buildings that always made me feel underdressed. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a calm, methodical way of speaking that reminded me of a surgeon. He didn't waste time with small talk. He opened a laptop, turned it toward me, and pulled up a series of spreadsheets. We've been auditing your company's books as part of a routine compliance review, he explained. We found several irregularities in the accounts, specifically unauthorized transfers to a personal account. I leaned forward. Whose account? Caroline Hayward, he said. Your wife. I stared at the screen. The numbers were staggering. Over the past 18 months, Caroline had been siphoning money out of the company's operating account. Not huge amounts at a time, just enough to stay under the radar. A few thousand here, 5,000 there. In total, she'd taken over $200,000. Does she have signing authority on this account? Dennis asked. I nodded slowly. She became a partner 6 months ago. Before that, she had limited access for operational expenses. Well, these transfers started before she became a partner, Dennis said, which means she was using access she wasn't authorized to use. I sat back in my chair. My mind was racing, but my body felt numb. What happens now? I asked. Dennis folded his hands on the desk. That depends on you. Technically, this is embezzlement. You could report it to the authorities, or you could handle it privately. I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about Caroline, about Blake, about the company I'd built, about how they'd thrown me away like I was nothing. I'll handle it privately, I said. Dennis nodded. I'll prepare a full report for you. You'll want to consult with an attorney. Then she looked up at me. You know they screwed you, right? She said. I nodded. The good news, she continued, is that they didn't screw you as badly as they think they did. She explained that the partnership agreement I'd signed had been poorly drafted. Blake had probably downloaded a template off the internet and filled in the blanks without consulting a lawyer. There were loopholes, ambiguities. And more importantly, the financial misconduct gave me grounds to dissolve the partnership entirely. You could take back control of the company, Marcia said. Force them out. But it'll be ugly and expensive. I don't want the company back, I said. She raised an eyebrow. What do you want? I thought about it. I thought about Caroline's indifferent expression when she told me I was holding them back. I thought about Blake sitting in my office firing me without a hint of shame. I want them to understand what they did, I said quietly. Marcia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I can work with that. Marcia started by sending a formal letter to Blake and Caroline, notifying them that I was aware of the embezzlement and that I was exercising my rights under the partnership agreement to freeze all financial accounts pending an internal review. The accounts were frozen within 24 hours. Blake called me that same day. He was furious. You can't do this, he said. You don't have the authority. Actually, I do, I said calmly. The partnership agreement states that any partner can initiate a financial review if they suspect misconduct. And I suspect misconduct. This is bullshit, he snapped. You're just pissed because we fired you. No, Blake, I said. I'm pissed because my wife stole $200,000 from the company, and you knew about it. There was silence on the other end of the line. I didn't, he started. Don't, I interrupted. Marcia's already seen the records. Caroline transferred money to an account you both have access to. You signed off on half the invoices. You knew. He hung up. I listened without interrupting. When she was done, I said, "So you're saying you stole from the company, but it's Blake's fault?" She flinched. "I didn't steal. You took money that wasn't yours," I said. "Without authorization. That's theft." She tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. "Richard, please," she said. "We can fix this. We'll pay it back. Just don't ruin everything we've built." "Everything we've built," I repeated. "You mean everything I built, that you and Blake stole?" She started crying harder. I didn't feel anything. I just watched her, the way you'd watch a stranger on the street. "I want you out of the house by the end of the week," I said. She looked up at me, shocked. "You're kicking me out?" "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "And I'm revoking your access to all joint accounts. Marcia's already drafting the paperwork." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me, like I'd turned into someone else. Maybe I had. Not with an active embezzlement investigation and a partnership dispute on the books. He called me 6 times in 1 week. I didn't answer. He showed up at the house once. I didn't let him in. Caroline stopped reaching out after the first month. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved in with her sister, that she was looking for work. I didn't ask for details. I didn't care. The divorce was finalized 4 months after I left the company. Caroline didn't contest it. She didn't have the money for a lawyer, and even if she did, Marcia had made it clear that fighting would only make things worse for her. She kept the car. I kept the house. I kept my retirement accounts. She walked away with almost nothing. Blake sent me an email after it was over. Just 1 sentence. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. But if I had, I would have told him the truth. I wasn't happy. Happiness wasn't the point. I was free. Marcia shut that down fast. The partnership agreement had been dissolved when the embezzlement came to light. He had no legal claim to anything. Caroline didn't even try. I think she knew it was over. I don't think about Blake or Caroline often. When I do, it's not with anger. It's more like looking at old photographs of people you used to know. They made their choices. I made mine. "Really? You built that place from the ground up?" "I did," I said. And then I walked away. Best decision I ever made. He laughed like he thought I was joking. I wasn't. I built something once. Something I was proud of. And when it was taken from me, I didn't fight to get it back. I didn't burn it all down out of spite. I just let it go. And in letting go, I found something better. Myself. That's the thing about family betrayal. It doesn't just teach you who people really are. It teaches you who you are. And sometimes that's worth more than anything they could have taken. I was standing in my own office when Blake fired me. 10 minutes later, security escorted him out. Not because I planned it, not because I orchestrated some elaborate revenge, but because the truth has a way of surfacing. And when it does, the people who thought they were untouchable suddenly realize they never were. I didn't need to destroy them. They destroyed themselves. All I had to do was step aside and let them.